Hello, 3D Zipguy here. I'm back with another zip tie action figure build. For those of you discovering this channel for the first time, Zipguy is a 3D printable action figure that uses zip ties for its joints. It's specifically designed for filament-based 3D printing. If you want to learn more about Zipguy, visit 3dzipguy.com. Whether you're new here or a longtime supporter, a big thanks to all of you for clicking on this video. I really appreciate it. And speaking of gratitude, I'd also like to thank Trees for sending over their TTS 20 Max laser engraver. If you're into making custom action figures, this tool is a game changer. With its 20-watt laser power and large cutting area, you can easily create detailed accessories like weapons, armor, and even superhero capes. It's perfect for crafting mini dioramas, engraving custom designs on figure bases, or adding intricate details to your creations. Stick around later in the video to see how I'll be using this machine in one of my own projects. Whether you're building one-of-a-kind figures or starting a small business, the TTS 20 Max gives you the precision and space to bring your ideas to life. Check out the link in the description to learn more, and thanks again to Trees for supporting the channel. Now, let's talk about what I am working on right now. These are parts of the new Zipguy Alpha 2.0 body. The original Zipguy Alpha served its purpose, a solid base for action figure characters. It received good feedback from many of you, but I always knew there was room for improvement. And I've made a lot of changes in this new version. By the way, if you only want to watch the figure assembly, you can skip ahead by clicking the timestamps provided in the description. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the whole video. The biggest improvement? The sculpt work. Admittedly, the earlier Zipguy figures were unintentionally stylized. The design approach was function over form. I had to prioritize the zip tie joints, which meant the anatomy wasn't as detailed as it could have been. But after getting insightful feedback from all of you, I realized there was a way to push the design further. For the Zipguy Alpha 2.0, I focused on making the figure's anatomy as accurate as my skills allowed, while maintaining the functionality of the joints. I made sure to have plenty of reference material, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Another key improvement is in the joints. While I love the look of the drop-down ball joint design in the original Zipguy Alpha, the new ratcheted hip joint system is much sturdier and offers a better range of motion. You'll see exactly what I mean as we move through the build. I originally planned to release these improvements as updates, but with so many changes, I decided to launch a completely new body. The updated appearance required re-engineering the internal joints, and that's the big lesson I learned here. Designing action figures is a balancing act between aesthetics and engineering. If you focus too much on one, you'll compromise the other. Sculpt a highly detailed figure, and the joints can get clunky. Focus on the joints first, and you might lose some of the figure's natural flow. Finding that sweet spot is the real challenge. With Zipguy Alpha 2.0, I think I've found a solid balance between form and function, at least for 3D printed zip tie action figures. Man, I'm not very good with the brush, and it's hard to hide mistakes when you're working with just two high contrast colors. Yikes, that escalated quickly. I got so frustrated because I couldn't stay on the line, and now I've got an even bigger mess. I will put this aside and figure out a way to salvage this, if I can. All right, enough talk. Let's get into the build. Here are the tools you'll need. X-Acto cutters, preferably with fresh blades. Side cutters, long nose pliers, and of course, zip ties. The default size of the figure is about 16.6 centimeters, roughly 6.5 inches, but you can scale it up if you'd like a larger figure. For the default size, you'll need 3mm by 150mm and 4mm by 150mm zip ties. Here's a black 3mm zip tie, and here's a white 3mm zip tie. As you can see, the width isn't exactly 3mm. The smallest zip tie head width may vary slightly, typically between 3mm and 3.6mm. Anything within this range is acceptable. Important note, When purchasing cable ties or zip ties, make sure the dimensions listed on the packaging refer to the head of the zip tie, not the width of the tail. However, if you are unsure, measure the tail. A 3mm head will typically have a tail width of 1.8 to 2 millimeters. Anything larger may be too big. It's always a good idea to bring a ruler or caliper when shopping for 3mm zip ties. But in case you don't have one on hand, here's a helpful tip. Get 2 credit cards and stack them together like this. Hold the zip tie tail up against the edge of the stacked cards. If the width of the tail is roughly the same as the combined thickness of both cards, this indicates that the tail is about 2 millimeters and should have a 3mm head width, give or take. This zip tie will most likely fit the default Zipguy scale. For this particular build, I've scaled the parts to 185% in my slicer to simulate a 1/6 scale figure. You can scale it up to 200% if you want to make him more imposing. I will be using 8mm by 300mm and 6mm by 300mm zip ties for this scale. Let's start with the feet. Begin by inserting a 6mm zip tie through the bottom hole of the heel and into the horizontal tunnel. Next, insert the tail of the zip tie into the bottom slot of the toe. Curling the tip of the zip tie will make it easier to pass through. Pull the zip tie to close the gap between the parts, but don't tighten it completely just yet. Insert the zip tie back into the horizontal tunnel and out through the hole where you started. Lock the zip tie, but before tightening it, make sure to push the head into the hole towards the toe. Bring the toe as close as possible, but don't tighten the zip tie just yet. Once everything is aligned, tighten the zip tie as much as you can. Use a chopstick or screwdriver to ensure everything is snug, then trim off any excess. Repeat this process for both feet. For the knees, you don't need to worry about which one is the left or right. However, you do need to be mindful of the orientation. This is the lower part, and this is the top. Here are the rest of the parts: the shin on the left and the ankle donut on the right. For this, I am using a 6mm by 300mm zip tie. Insert the zip tie from the back bottom of the knee. Pull the zip tie in, but don't pull it all the way through. Leave at least a 10mm gap between the knee and the zip tie head. Next, insert the zip tie into the lower leg, go through the hole, and around the ankle donut. Then, insert it back into the lower leg. Lock the zip tie, but do not pull it all the way through just yet. Push the zip tie head into the lower leg hole using a thin screwdriver or a pair of long-nose pliers. Carefully pull the ankle donut down to snap the knee in place. Make sure the zip tie head inside the shin doesn't pop out. Hold the knee in place while slowly tightening the tail from behind the leg. Take your time and make sure the zip tie teeth don't catch on any other parts, except for the ankle donut. Slot the ankle donut into place and pull as tight as you can. Move the knee and ankle donut to check if there's still room for tightening. Trim off any excess. Repeat this process for both lower legs. To connect the foot to the leg, you'll need an 8mm zip tie. Before inserting the zip tie, bend the neck like this using a pair of pliers. Please do not skip this step. It's absolutely important. From the bottom of the foot, insert the zip tie into the donut hole below the shin. It doesn't matter which direction you insert it from, as long as the tip can make a U-turn back to the heel. Lock the zip tie, but make sure to move the parts as close as possible to each other before tightening. After that, hold the head firmly while slowly pulling the ankle joint. Make sure everything is really tight. Trim off the excess. Repeat the same process for the other leg. Moving up to the thighs, insert an 8mm zip tie through the top hole. Curl the tip and insert it through the top front of the knee, then back up into the thigh. Lock the zip tie and push the head into the bottom hole, ensuring the knee is properly slotted into the thigh. Pin down the head with a tool while carefully pulling the zip tie to tighten it. Move the knee to check that the zip tie is tight enough in all positions. Finally, trim the tail as close as possible. Repeat the same process for the other leg. The new ratchet hip joints are the biggest change in this version. Here's how to assemble them. These are the parts for the new hip joint design. This is the ratchet peg. You can see there's an R on the disc, indicating that this assembly is for the right hip. These two pieces here fit together like this, sandwiching the ratchet peg in the middle. Here's the left hip assembly. To determine the front, locate the butt. These are the butt cheeks, so they should face towards the back. Again, here are the ratchet pegs, marked with R and L. Let's assemble these. First, insert the back part of the right hip into the right ratchet peg. We're off to a challenging start with this joint. It's incredibly tight, which is actually a good thing. I might have to use some tools for this. We'll see if this clamp can help. I'm using this new torso joint to help push the rim of the ratchet peg toward the hip peg. It'll make sense in a bit, I hope. It seems to be working a bit, but these cheap old clamps are slipping. Nothing. That's disappointing. Let's try again with another clamp. Success! Okay, I'm kidding. The other clamp was also busted. I actually had to hammer it down with a screwdriver handle on the floor. Now attach the front hip panel, making sure these parts slot in properly. Then just give it a big squeeze. I think that went pretty well. The seams look decent. Now this next step should be easier. Snap the hip joint right into the right thigh. You should hear or feel a satisfying pop, and that locks the joint in place. Repeat this process for both legs. This is what I call the pelvis block. The ratchet pegs will sit at the bottom of the pelvis, like this. But before that, we need to prepare the pelvic assembly before connecting the legs. Take note of the orientation of the pelvis block relative to the main pelvis. It should slot in this way. Take an 8mm zip tie and insert the tail with the teeth facing upwards into the pelvis block like this. Make sure to curl the tip upwards. Now take the pelvis and locate the lower slot in the front cavity of the part. Carefully slip in the zip tie, and it should come out of the upper slot. Next, grab the pelvis block and insert the zip tie into the upper slot, just above the lower slot. It should come out of the hollow ball at the top. Gently pull the zip tie while carefully pushing in the pelvis block. Don't pull too hard on the zip tie. Just wiggle the pelvis block into the slot. You may need to pull the block in and out a few times. Get the two 6mm zip ties and loop them around the slots on both sides of the pelvis. Lock them, but don't pull the zip ties tight just yet. Leave some space, enough to fit 2 fingers in the zip tie loops. Now, pull the pelvis block again to make room for the ratchet pegs to slot in. Press the pelvis block down and tighten the 2 smaller zip ties to secure both ratchet pegs. Again, don't pull on the middle zip tie. Cut off the excess tails. Remember this guy? I was able to save it. What I did was paint the chest emblem area completely white, making sure no black showed through. Then, I carefully covered the excess with black. What I realized was that it was much easier for me to paint around the emblem, rather than trying to keep my hand still along a very narrow line. Here's the result. I'm not a great painter at all, but I'm pretty pleased with it. What do you think? If you have any painting tips or techniques to share, I'd love to hear them. Drop your suggestions in the comments section. Continuing with the assembly. Here are the parts for the upper torso: the chest, the neck peg, the torso joint, which made a guest appearance during the hip assembly, the chest socket, and the neck. These parts are more or less the same as those used in previous versions of the Zipguy action figures, with a few modifications to the neck peg and the torso donut. The torso donut has been updated for a new joint setup within the mid-torso. To set this up, I will be using 2 6mm zip ties. Insert the zip tie into one of the 4 slots within the chest cavity. It should come out the other hole. The direction doesn't matter much, as long as you're able to lock the zip tie. Lock it, but don't tighten anything just yet. Next, insert the chest socket through the armholes. Hold it in place so you can carefully tighten the zip ties, making them as tight as possible. Trim off any excess. Now, take the revised torso donut. Using a 6 or 8mm zip tie, pass it through the donut and into the center hole inside the chest cavity. Insert the zip tie through the neck and around the neck peg ring, ensuring that the flat side of the neck peg is facing forward. Then return the tail of the zip tie through the neck hole and out to the chest cavity. Lock the zip tie, push the joint and the zip tie head against the chest socket, holding it in place with your thumb. Then, carefully tighten the zip tie, while keeping an eye on the position of the neck peg as it slots into the neck. Make it as tight as possible. Trim off the excess. Time to link the pelvis and chest together. With these two pieces, this torso core goes into the midsection, like that. Pass the zip tie from the pelvis into the midsection. Then, through the small hole in the middle of the spherical torso ball joint, loop it back to the midsection and into the hollow ball at the top of the pelvis block. Do you see that tiny slit inside the block? That's where the head of the zip tie is waiting. If you didn't yank the tail from the pelvis, the zip tie head should be perfectly aligned to take in its own tail. It seems I may have yanked it while handling the tail. But not to worry. All we have to do is push the zip tie back into the torso block so the head aligns again. It worked. Now, get all the parts aligned while carefully tightening the 8mm zip tie. Lock it as tight as possible. We're almost done. Here are the parts for the right arm. They're very similar to the old version, but with some improvements. Let's start with the right forearm. Insert a 6mm zip tie into the lower arm. Take one of the right hands and insert the tail through the ring. Push the tail back into the arm and lock the zip tie. Again, be careful not to tighten it just yet. Pull the hand as close to the forearm as possible. Using a stick or a screwdriver, push the head into place as you tighten the zip tie. Using a precision blade, cut off the tail as close as possible to the zip tie head. Grab the elbow and slot the new elbow peg into place. Use a 6mm zip tie to lock the two parts together. Make sure the head sits inside the rectangular hole of the elbow peg. Check the orientation of the peg. The notches of the elbow peg should be facing away from the elbow. Cut off the tail. Before inserting the peg into the forearm, I like to flex the plastic a bit, just to make sure I don't have a hard time popping it in and out. Perfect. Now, moving on to the right shoulder. To tell which shoulder is left or right, pay attention to the bulging side of the part. The bulge should be facing backwards. Therefore, what you're looking at right now is the front. Again, the bulge points towards the back. So, this right here should be the right shoulder. I hope that makes sense. Here is the upper right arm. I can tell because of the pointy bulge on the side, which should be facing outwards. Connect the right shoulder to the upper arm. Then, twist the parts so that the rectangular slots are aligned like this. Grab an 8mm zip tie and insert it into the shoulder, just below the cylindrical bridge. Make sure to keep the zip tie head outside the shoulder. If it accidentally gets inside, fish it out. Insert the zip tie into the front of the elbow, pull the zip tie and insert it back into the upper arm, then out through the shoulder, lock it and push the head back in. Fix the positioning of the elbow before tightening the zip tie. Jam the head with the tool to make sure it doesn't come out while tightening the zip tie. Cut off the tail. Clip the shoulder hook onto the cylindrical bridge. It's going to take a bit of force, but it shouldn't be too difficult. There's your right arm. Repeat the process for the left side. Insert the shoulder spacers. Flat side in, round side out. Pop in the arms like so. Insert the rounded side of the tongue into the socket of the neck peg. Twist the tongue sideways and slip it through the slit in the middle of the jaw. Then, pop the jaw over the neck peg. Finally, attach the head. Oh, I almost forgot. I must say, I am very proud of this new figure. Despite my skill limitations, I was still able to push myself beyond my comfort zone, painting being one of them. Especially since he is one of my favorites, it makes me even more ecstatic that I could 3D print him at this size. I think the silhouette looks cool, and I honestly don't think I can improve on the figure as it is. Well, perhaps I can add just one little thing. Give me a moment. Big thanks again to Trees for sending the TTS 20 Max laser engraver. If you'd like to check it out and explore their other products, I've included affiliate links in the description. I earn a small commission at no extra cost to you, which helps fund projects like this. Hitting like, subscribe, and share helps too.